We're now going to go through the two films. We're going to go through Jake's mix and then our mix. Now, when I initially talked to Jake about this, I was like, I'll do a mix of the stuff that you did, the Foley you recorded, and then we'll do one of ours. But the more I looked at that, the more I'm like, well, first off, that'd be a waste of time. Second off, I think there's a bigger teaching opportunity in showing what he did. Now, obviously, Jake is not here to defend himself, for lack of a better word, but I think this will be an interesting thing. And we'll just walk through why Doug and I did some things differently than Jake, why we changed some things or whatever. These are level matched. They are both level matched to -18. And we're just going to kind of toggle back and forth. I will make mine green and I will make Jake's red. So you know as soon as you see the color switch. We'll start with mine.
Last time it rained. I remember the last time it rained.
So in this opening sequence, this is taste, you know. Doug designed a little thing there. A little bit different. The biggest thing was the rain. So first off, there was no, we added in the thunder as the transient. He just had a bass hit. So a little bit stronger of a come in on there. And then it just kind of felt a little flat. So that's a mix thing. We turned up the volume. We made our rain a little bit more present, a little bit more transient driven. We layered a lot of different rain sounds. As you can see right here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different things going on there. I don't know what Jake had. Actually, no, I do. I do know what Jake had. One rain sound. So these are all split on Jake's. They're all mono splits, so it's left and right. So he had one rain sound, he had one deep boom, and then he had one riser that kind of led to the black. That's the difference going on there, and then I know that here's our riser. So typically when we build risers or swooshes or whatever you want to call it, dips, drops, downlifters, we try and use stuff that pertains to the scene. So as an example, whenever we do car stuff, I always try and build whooshes and risers out of the car engine, out of car tires. So that way it's like your brain is still in the same space and it's not like some electronic synth that's doing the riser. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I feel like this kind of gives it a little bit more organic build. So Doug built this one. This is lightning going up into thunder. And then here's just a little drone and some steam. And then that, of course, goes into an impact on the down there.
I remember the last time it rained.
Now, remember in the VO video, we talked about a lot about this. That coffee palate cleanser, when you're smelling perfume, you got to smell that coffee in between because otherwise it's going to throw you off so bad. So in this case,
I remember the last time it rained. I remember the last time it rained. I remember.
Jake's is going to sound a lot more exciting, a lot louder because it is. It's going to maybe sound better. It's going to sound like, whoa, that's coming out of the speakers. I don't feel like it's balanced properly against the movie.
I remember the last time it rained. I remember the last time it rained.
So again, you have those mouth clicks, the lack of mid-range, whatever. So that's one area, like initially off the bat. the ambience. You know, that rock letdown. This was something Doug and we were focusing on a lot, was kind of putting us in that space. Jake's, I know that the very first time I watched this, one of the initial things I realized was there's no space. It just feels like Foley was recorded in a dead room, and he did a good job, but it felt like that rather than feeling like I was there with the actor. Another one was the zipper. So one thing that I do like better about Jake's is that he had the actual backpack, and so it does seem to my ears match better what that backpack looks like. It's a little more thick and heavy, and the zipper is a little bit more robust sounding. But overall, it feels like the timing of things and the overall mix of the environment versus the actor versus the space that we're in is a little off. We kept this is some of the only Foley we kept of his, which was the handling of the radio. But there was no definitive turn on. We wanted to add in a little click to kind of define, like, hey, here's where it turned on. Those scroll wheels, there's usually that click point. Now let's talk about the radio sounds. So I really like Jake's, genuinely. I think it sounds really awesome. I think it's a lot of fun. The biggest problem I noticed, though, was his white noise was not believable. It didn't feel like it was coming from the proper space or the proper speaker.
Broadcasting to this FM channel starting every morning. Broadcast will be repeated throughout until the next one. Broadcasting to this FM channel starting every morning.
So he's got the voice affected on this track where she's talking, but this static pss, 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 pss is not affected. And so my brain is immediately like, well, so what's making the radio sound and what's making the white noise sound? Because if it's coming from the radio, in theory, it should have the exact same tone. He also missed the placement on the...
Broadcasting to this FM channel starting every morning.
So that just feels kind of empty and awkward.
Broadcasting to this FM channel starting every morning. Broadcasting to this FM channel starting every morning.
Okay, and again, some of the Foley here felt a little out of space.
Broadcast will be repeated throughout until the next one. Broadcast will be repeated throughout until the next one.
One of my biggest things that I noticed with that one is it felt like too much. It felt like the performance was too much. There's just too much handling of the book. What's interesting about the ambiences is neither one is right or wrong. They're just different, obviously. Since this was such a bare scene and the music was bare, we leaned super heavily into the actual ambience and really pushed that loud, as you can tell. And it doesn't mean that Jake's is wrong. In a way, it's better in the sense of like, man, look at how weird and lonely and awkward this world is. It kind of sells that message a little bit better. But since we don't have a big score or a ton of action on screen, we decided to lean heavily into that ambience.
Until the next one. It is 9 a.m. 23rd, 20. Still unable to make contact with anyone. It is 9 a.m. on September 23rd, 2031. Still unable to make contact with any other traveler.
Proximity in space. The pencil sharpening was just, I felt really bright sticking out, so we kind of more subdued ours.
September 23rd, 20. Still unable to make contact with anyone. We left the valley yet. See what remains left.
We decided to pull way back on the radio, so it was not as intelligible.
We left the valley yesterday to see what remained of Aspen. And like we predicted, it was deserted. Very little supplies remained and no survivors. For now, we're staying in the Elk Mountains near Aspen, Colorado. Our coordinates are 39 degrees. Deserted. Very little supplies
So we'll
remain.
probably go back and adjust that a little bit.
For now, we're staying in the Elk Mountains.
You know, bring back a little bit more of her talking about that. So what I would do is just toss that line. I'm going to just toss that on my more clear spot, and that way I can adjust it later. See, the thing about sound is you're constantly going through readjusting little micro things. And so now that I'm like under a microscope comparing the two, it's like, well, I actually like that you can hear a little bit more of the story better. It follows along with him writing in the journal. So that helps out. As you can see, we're still on version 0.5, so we're not officially, we haven't officially locked this yet. The pencil writing on Jake's was a little bit intense in terms of the actual mix.
And like we predicted, it was deserted.
It seemed a little bit more, it seemed not as timed is what was.
And like deserted. Very little supplies.
So that was all just EQ and volume adjustments on that one.
7 minutes, 1.6 seconds north, 107 degrees, 2 minutes, 2.5 seconds west. Broadcasting to this FM channel starting every morning. Broadcast will be repeated throughout.
So that one, specifically this backpack,
2 minutes, 2.5 seconds west. Broadcasting to this FM channel starting every morning at 9.
I really like the chunky thick sound. I like it a lot. The problem is it sounds like the book is going deeper and deeper and deeper into the backpack. It's getting more like, right?
2.5 seconds west. Broadcasting to this FM channel starting every morning at 9.
Really nice tone. The problem is it's not moving. I can see that the book is staying in the same position. So we mimic that type of behavior right here.
2 minutes, 2.5 seconds west. Broadcasting to this FM channel starting every morning at 9.
So it's more of just kind of a struggle to get it in the exact perfect spot as opposed to like going in deeper.
And 107 degrees, 2 minutes, 2.5 seconds west. Broadcasting to this FM channel starting every morning at 9. Broadcast will be repeated throughout the day until the next morning.
So that one was fun. Ha ha ha! Fun, 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 fun.
Broadcast will be repeated
Canteen.
until the next Broadcast will be repeated through 9 a.m. September 23rd, 20.
Again, that one seemed.
Broadcast will be repeated throughout the day until the next morning. 9 a.m. It is 9 a.m. September 23rd, 2033.
I like hearing the water in there, so I may pull that back in. I may go back into his Foley thing right here, and then throw that into. Oh no, it's right here. So I may unmute that and then throw that in there. It's always good. There's a mixer. His name is Chris Lord Algae. He does music. He was talking about how when he gets mixes from bands, like their demo, and his job is to make it sound better. Someone was talking about like, oh, do you love just to like go crazy and make it all, way better or whatever? And he's like, well, no, these guys have fallen in love with the demo, right? So my job is to make that demo better. And so in this case, there's some artistic choices that we're making instead of Jake's, but it's moments like these that this is Jake's demo. He's very happy with this, and obviously we'll have him come in and sit and approve everything. But it's like as I'm going through and listening to his demo, I like the water. We didn't bring that element back in. So we need to make sure that stays in because that's a story element driving this entire movie because it's about water, right? So it's like those little hints and those little story things need to be preserved. And that's where it's interesting talking about proximity and space and all that stuff, because it's like, well, maybe the water is a little too loud in his mix, but because it's giving you a hint or foreshadowing something, then it's okay to be a little bit unrealistic, you know. And of course, using EQ and stuff, we can shape that to really make it dialed in, but we can still cue our audience in auditorily.
9 a.m. September 23rd.
Okay, so the getting in the truck scene. So that's the exact same clip. Jake said that he put a limiter on that clip, and that's why everything feels really loud and in your face, and it gets a little bit overwhelming. And then, of course, you know, when we get to here, we've covered this scene in some of the other videos.
Or Uncle Spencer and Jesse, we're gonna go with him to Colorado. I'm gonna stay here. I'm gonna take care of Mom. I can't come with you, but I'm gonna see you soon, okay?
I want to.
I know you don't want to, but they're gonna take care of you. See you soon, okay?
Okay.
I promise. Trust me? I love you. Or Uncle Spencer and Jesse, we're gonna go with him to Colorado. I'm gonna stay here. I'm gonna take care of Mom. I can't come with you.
So what we did is, obviously, as you've seen in the other videos, is we did Foley. See that? And then we have our clean dialogue in here.
Or Uncle Spencer and Jesse, we're gonna go with him to Colorado, okay? I'm gonna stay here. I'm gonna take care of Mom. I can't come with you, but I'm gonna see you soon, okay?
I want to.
I know you don't want to, but they're gonna take care of you.
So by using those elements, we've now built up the entire environment, right?
Colorado, okay? I'm gonna stay here. I'm gonna take care of Mom. I can't come with you, but I'm gonna
Of
see
course,
you.
our outside ambiences are in there as well. Neighborhood, birds, air.
Okay?
Okay.
I promise. You trust me?
So his is brighter. I do like that tonal quality of the dialogue, but because of how we had to clean it, we lost it. It just is what it is. So if we're not going to do ADR or we couldn't get the mic in the right position, this is just kind of the sacrifice you have to make.
I love you.
With any other travelers. We left the valley yesterday.
Trust me? I love you.
We left the valley yesterday. See what remained of us.
So this part is a good one to talk about Foley and perspective. So it just feels kind of empty. So that's just a combo of footsteps, the right environment of footsteps, a clothes Foley track, the backpack Foley track, again, EQ and perspective stuff, and then the ambiences, which really help this scene come to life. You know, and then of course, every time he changes, the ambience slightly alters, right? And that was one thing I noticed on Jake's, is it just seemed to be completely void of any ambience. And kind of like in the rock scene, it's like, well, is that wrong to have no ambience? And it's like, I mean, it creates a more dead feel, but looking at the image, it looks like he's on top of this cliff. So you would definitely hear more wind as opposed to being down in a valley, right? I also felt like there was a little bit of repetition in the sounds of Foley, and whether or not they were repeated, I don't know, but they just felt a little bit repetitious. Also, perspective on this one. Like that little subtle rattle of the metal. It sounds like it's right next to me. I'm hearing that rattle again. And it's not a bad sound. And remember, these are volume matched. So Jake added in, you know, him taking a dump. Sound effect that we had cleaned up, and it kind of it's there, but he's coughing. So it's like, well, are we hearing him or are we not hearing him? Because, you know, at the end of the film, there's no sound, and that's a very intentional decision. So it's like, well, why are we hearing the ambience, the footsteps, the backpack, the canteen, but we're not hearing him cough, right? This is one of my favorite things Doug added. The fly. Because what is worse than being in a hot, sweaty, dirty environment and then having a fly fly around you? Just makes it gross. So again, kind of a lack of all the elements here. And I know he talked about not being sure if he wanted sound there or not. But to me, it just felt weird because he wanted the scream in here on the fall, you know. There just never seemed to be a definitive, like, here's why there's no sound, right? Whereas at the end, his voiceover and the music is leading and it's more montagey because he's describing all this time passing. And I know that time is passing here, but it just seemed empty in a very strange way. Those screams Doug pulled from the fight later on, because otherwise it was just feeling awkward, you know, like, so if we just have the music and the Foley. See, it's like completely unrealistic, because if you were falling like that, you'd be making some sort of noise. So perfect placement there on Doug's part. So I love that element. Doug designed that little swoosh in there. You know, as opposed to just kind of fading in the crackling. It just kind of happens. I really like that this definitively leads us to the next moment. And that's how you can use sound to tell your story, right? And we talked about this. You know, in the other scene, those accents. It's just kind of there. It just kind of exists. It's like, well, there's no story being told. Like, you know what I mean? You can hear the radio. So there's no ambiances.
I saw your fire from about a mile back. I thought you might could use some company.
And it's interesting because for me personally, this low wind, it kind of helps build this awkward tension. Again, the fire accent there.
I'm Sean.
James.
I'm from Tucson, Arizona.
I know where Tucson is.
Doug added in the crunching of the food.
I'm from Anaheim, California.
I know where Anaheim is.
The dialogue's super buried. It's very hard to hear.
Disneyland.
And that score in this mix, just, I don't know, it's not definitive enough. It doesn't come out enough. So, you know, I've got the radio going.
How much do you have left?
What?
Your water, how
Two.
much do you have left?
To help tell that story.
I ran out yesterday. When I saw your tracks. I thought maybe if I found you, you might have a little extra.
Nobody has extra.
You might have a little extra.
Nobody has extra.
Please. Just a sip.
Look.
Very little supplies remained and no survivors. For now, we're staying in the Elk Mountains near Aspen, Colorado. Our
See,
force-
so the once again, it's not coming from the radio. It's just there. And so when I first heard this,
Look.
I was like, what is the kid like glitching? The other kid? Is this Wreck-It Ralph? Is this The Matrix? You know,
Look.
very little
as
supplies-
opposed to, and it's also funny because when that comes in, you're like, oh, was the radio on the whole time? Was it just sitting there? Was there no reception, right? So that's why throughout the entire piece, I had bits of it playing.
Just a sip.
Look.
Very little supplies remained,
And then you get the most reception.
For now, we're
That's what
staying
leads
in the
them
Elk
to,
Mountains,
you know.
Aspen, Colorado. Our coordinates are 39 degrees, 7.
I
Colorado?
actually may, you know what? I think I may move that.
For now, we're staying in the Elk.
I'm going to bump it because I feel like the eye line is not motivated enough because his reaction time would not be immediate. So if she starts talking here, check this out. You do this.
Very little supplies remained and no survivors. For now, we're staying in the Elk Mountains near Aspen, Colorado. Our coordinates are...
Yep, way better. As opposed to here where it was.
Look.
Very little supplies remained and no
See, because he wouldn't look, and then she says very little supplies. Because in a natural reaction, I don't know if you ever saw the movie Sully about Tom Hanks, you know, the true story of the guy that landed the plane in the Hudson River. They kept running all the tests. Spoiler alert, so if you haven't seen it, skip over this. But they ran all these tests, and they're like, well, you know, this could have been avoided. And then at the very end, they're like, wait, human error or human reaction time or whatever. So then they started playing in human reaction time, and he definitely did the right thing. So this is, you have to think about this the same way. It's like, if there's a gunshot, I wouldn't look before the gunshot. I wouldn't even look like, you know, right at the transient, bang, I'm looking. It's like, bang, bang, right? There's a delayed reaction. So by pushing that over to the left, very little supplies remain. It's like, oh, catching my attention.
no survivors. For now, we're staying in the Elk Mountains near Aspen, Colorado. Our coordinates are 39 degrees, 7.
Colorado? I'm heading there to get to my girl.
107 degrees.
I sent her out with a group of trucks so she could have food and water. I stay back in Anaheim to take care of my wife.
Again, the dialogue is so, I mean, you can see it on the waveform here.
Our coordinates are 39 degrees, 7 minutes.
Colorado? I'm heading there to get to my girl.
107 degrees.
I sent her out with a group of trucks.
Like, so he was mumbling. It's rough to begin with. You know, we talked about that when we were cleaning. It's not like it's an easy thing, but I mean, that dialogue is non-existent on this waveform.
Group of trucks so she could have food and water. I stay back in Anaheim to take care of my wife. I only have enough food and water to get me there, and that's if nothing goes wrong. You can go too, but you cannot come with me. I have the coordinates.
And
I'll
these have
give
been
them to you,
volume matched
but I don't want you
in
near me.
RX loudness match.
You can try and follow me. Try and make it there. But you cannot be near me. Got it? I'm sorry you ran out of water, but I can't help you.
See, so I keep that radio going.
Perfect.
So we've got clipping in Jake's. The Foley is kind of non-existent. We've got clipping again on, and you can see it visibly here on the punching. Back clip.
Please! 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 Let me have a sip! Please! Please! Please!
Again, these are volume. Bring that radio back. He hasn't put it away yet. So I liked his Foley that he did there. But again, compared to the previous dialogue, you know, when James was talking, it was like you can't even hear what he's saying. So we kind of did a more dull pulled back to blend with, you know, the backpack kind of contrasting the two. More subtle. Because also you have to think about the texture of what this book is sitting on right now. It's in sand. It's not going to scrape against a desk or anything. So I do believe the page whip, but there's something about the takeaway. The texture is wrong. So maybe we could add in a page flip on ours.
I hope you make.
Music has disappeared.
I hope you make it.
I like all the sound there, but the dialogue is just gone.
I hope you make it.
So here we go.
2020 was just the beginning.
So put that in your brain. I'm going to play it again. I want you to notice just how you feel when you listen to that dialogue. How you feel, not what it sounds like.
2020 was just the beginning. First it was the pandemic.
Now pay attention to how you feel with this. How you feel, not how it sounds.
2020 was just the beginning. First it was the pandemic. Then the riots. Then the wars.
Now listen to this.
Then the drought.
It's a lot quieter. It's a lot duller.
The drought killed the crops. Food became a currency.
But this is not sustainable. It's not listenable for long periods of time. It's very fatiguing.
But pretty soon that was gone too. This led to even more wars.
It's like, oh, that's cool for one line. But then it's like, ah!
Until eventually we had burned the earth to the ground. The last bomb was dropped a year ago.
So in essence, oh, whew, that's it. That's kind of the summary, you know, the comparison between the two. Obviously, we could get in more with a magnifying glass and look at each individual stem, but I don't think there's a point to that. I think the general point is Jake's mix, I was missing dialogue in a lot of areas. The tonal quality of a lot of Foley and dialogue was not consistent, which to me is always number one. Even if the tonal quality, kind of like we talked about with the Keepsake film in, you know, the first part of the core videos, you have to play to the lowest common denominator. The tone in here was inconsistent throughout the whole thing. And that does mean that sometimes you sacrifice the clarity on one line to make it blend with the next or whatever it may be. So that was the biggest thing. Consistency in tone and dialogue, Foley, volume was all over the place, and just kind of perspective. There was no depth to the sound. It all seemed very flat, and, you know, if he had built out more ambiences or helped the perspective of the Foley with EQ or reverb or volume, or even, you know, we could really, you build out the 3D world of the whole thing. You know, the depth and the width of your mix helps your audience feel more immersed. And comparing the two, Jake's just sounds a little bit mono, you know, like coming from one source, especially this whole middle section of him kind of traveling. It just, I don't know, it kind of puts me to sleep almost. It just feels a lot the same. And like that pant scrape zipper sound, there's no motivation for a sound like that. Like, at least at that rate. Like, whip, 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 whip. What's motivating that? Because it couldn't be his crotch scraping together because he's moving a lot faster. So in that case, go with the footsteps. Any hoozle. So that's the breakdown. If you have any questions, let me know about it. But so fun.